when it comes to the space of being in a relationship with somebody, I can't focus on everything that I can provide. I also have to be attentive to what this person can provide to me as well. So just understanding that balance and understand the importance of compromise and stuff like that. But to sum that all up, get out of my own way. Get out of my own way and be open to the idea that somebody may know how to care for me and love me in a way that I never knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's up, Blueprint family? Thank you all for joining us. We have a special show for you all today. Of course, let me introduce myself. I go by Rob, and this is my wife, Dee. And then we have a special guest with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Calvin Anderson Jr., social worker, resident therapist right now. And yeah, just your local favorite social worker.
There you go. So we're going to get some information from Calvin on things that he sees that going on, of course, through the dating atmosphere today, and his opinion and his perspective as a male, as a young male growing up today. So this is very important because a lot of young people are wanting to know about, ways they can maneuver in relationships and things of that nature. And that's what we're trying to bring here. And also for me and my wife to understand too, what you all are going through, so that in case that someone asks us questions, that we are able to better equip them with knowledge and some information on how to maneuver their situations as well. Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off and ask the first question. What are some of the reasons why you think men are more hesitant or resistant to marriage in this modern time?
I think it's a couple different things, but the first one that really just comes to mind is just when we hear all of the different media that's coming out now, or a lot of blanket statements or blanket opinions about like what men are supposed to have, what men are supposed to be able to do, what we need, what we don't need, and stuff like that. And I think a lot of times we really meet it with it's like trying to overcompensate in a space where you don't have to do that yet. And when you're not able to meet whatever that standard is, it's like, well, I might as well just back off anyway because I'm already not meeting said standard. And I just think it's a lot of men feel as though we have to dot every I and cross every T before we actually know if this is the person that is meant for me to do that for right now. So I just think it's so much of a rush to be at a certain place and not being able to actually look at yourself and say, I'm not there yet. And that's okay.
Right.
And not feeling like you have to meet somebody where they are at that very moment. So I just think if a lot of men understood that, it would take a lot of that pressure on trying to be this figure or be this person when you don't have to do that right now.
Right. I think also too for the women as well, that for them to understand early in the relationship that it's all about refinement and growth in the relationship as well, to take that pressure off that man.
Yeah.
Because like our last episode that we have that's circulating now with that young couple, there is a level of refinement that goes along with marriage, and you don't see it until you're actually in it. So it is best, like you said, for young men to actually get themselves prepared with the intention and also to that refinement within themselves to that certain extent. But I'm gonna tell you the truth, like marriage takes you to another level of refinement, especially if you find that right person.
Yeah.
Oh no, but I like that answer that you provided. Thank you.
I think women too, like you were saying, the expectation has shifted a bit to where when I was looking for a husband, my perspective was more on I wanted a man who had a good head on his shoulder, who was intelligent, who could lead me, who can guide me, and was disciplined. Now it's shifted to where you got to have 6 figures, be 6 feet, and all this.
And one thing that I always remember, like growing up, is that they always told like young boys, like girls mature so much more faster than boys, right? And for a long time, I was always like, well, why do people say that? And I understand now that is really coming from more of the emotional stability piece and knowing who they are, to that point. And I think as time goes on, a lot of men have the understanding that we were already a step behind to a certain extent. So for a lot of the times, I just always say, as a young male, or if I'm talking to like a teenager or a young male who's like 21, 22 or something like that, I always explain it to them where it's like, if you're engaging with somebody, you're talking to somebody, and understanding that a lot of times if you're going to meet somebody who you feel is already matured to you, you have to meet them where they are. And if you're not ready to, or you do not feel like you have the ability to meet them there, it's best for you to retreat. Not saying that you won't have it one day, but don't put yourself in a position where you are now beginning to overcompensate, and then you don't enjoy the, let's say, the ride of what the relationship can be.
No, I understand that, and that comes off like men. In a way, to me, I take that as being a leader in the relationship.
Yes.
So as a man, that's the roles that we talked about in our first video, that, the traditional roles of men leading their household, leading their women.
Yeah.
And understanding how that is supposed to work in that dynamic. And I wholeheartedly agree with that as well.
And I think it's important that men know that they can be led as well.
Right.
I really do think that there's a lot of areas that I feel like men, we do not have it all together, that women really do provide. But I think it's understanding that when it's time to put that pride to the side, look at her or look at your partner and say, like, you got it. You got me. And maybe this is an area in leadership where I can learn from you, put what I know with what you know, and then we can really, move this forward.
Right. It is a teamwork effort. Yeah, it definitely is.
Especially with the emotional security part. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Right. No, yeah, it is a teamwork effort. I mean, it's not always about, trying to, one up somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
In the relationship. But yeah, we both, the dynamic is that we're both learning from each other.
Yeah.
And we all are growing together.
Yeah.
I get that. So next question. So who are some people, family or not, who influence you the most when it comes to your perspective on dating, relationships, and marriage?
I would have to credit that to all the women in my family. So I grew up house full of women, mom, aunt, grandmother, all under one roof. And being the only boy in the house for the most part, when you live with 3 generations of women in one house, you get a chance to see where everybody is at mentally and emotionally and stuff like that. So like for me growing up as a only kid, for the most part, my mom always drilled in my head, you have to know who you are. Which is very different because this is a woman talking to a guy. Right. So as I have maneuvered the world of dating, I've really had to wind it back a little bit and be like, my mom always told me I'm the prize. You the prize, but now we got to figure out how we're going to make this work, right?
Right.
Because I do have a level of security for myself that is not that's not always the case for a lot of men going into relationships, So if I would have to credit it to anybody or any set people, it would just have to be the women in my family. They've really taught me what it means to be patient when you're living in a house full of 3 women. You're not going to get every opinion across. You're not going to get every word across. Knowing when to pick your battles, knowing when to bow out gracefully and just be like, you got it. This is a conversation for another day. We ain't going to go back and forth. But it really just showed me that it's possible. It's possible to develop good communication and healthy communication. It may take some time, but all things considered, I would say I could not have known what I know now if I did not grow up in the way that I did.
Well, I have a question to add to that. What was the closest marriage couple or married relationship that you saw growing up?
Growing up, I think the closest married couple that I saw was possibly would have to be my godparents.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have to be my godparents. And I grew up in the church, so I always seen married couples. I seen people in relationships and stuff like that come. But for the most part, the regular one that I can remember seeing, and they're still married today, is my godparents.
Got you.
But when you don't live with them,
right?
Yeah.
So when it was like time for me to go home, it was kind of like I only saw what a relationship looked like part time.
Got you.
Whereas my everyday reality is I'm looking at a single black mom having to do it, having to get it and stuff like that. So there was that strong level of me knowing if I don't got it, then nobody else got it. But closest relationship where I just saw two people having to depend on one another for the answer or whatever, good, bad, and indifferent, would have to be my godparents.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some things that you did to help you garner the perspective of what a man needed to do in a relationship? Or who did you see help you, shape that mentality?
Honestly, it was just a lot of trial and error. You know, getting into like just trying stuff, doing different stuff.
Yeah.
Being able to accept when I'm wrong. You know, in the journey to where I am now, one thing my mom has always been very keen on me about was to always be accountable. So yes, I'm trying by a lot of trial and error, right? I'm getting it wrong. I'm not doing it right. I'm just doing stuff because I feel as though this is what a man is supposed to be doing. If somebody called me out on it or somebody is like, ain't nothing else I can say. Right. Ain't nothing else I can do. So it was just a lot of accountability that I had to learn very early. And some stuff I really just didn't know what I was doing. You know, I just thought like, well, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm thinking. This is what I could do. But it was never a situation where I was like, oh, this is how this is gonna go off the get-go. It's just situations happen. I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and it just was not what I was supposed to do. And I had to take a couple of like, knockbacks and blows and stuff like that for me to actually garner the perspective that I have. So it hasn't came with is any shortage of work, but I've definitely had to learn that everything does not have to be learned the hard way.
Right.
It doesn't have to always be difficult if you just take the time to actually sit back and think about what you're doing before you go do it. So I'm curious for you guys though, like how did you guys learn how to become dependent on each other and actually take advice from other people and not have to learn the hard way as like just two individuals who you think one thing, she might think one thing. And like, how do you guys like mesh that up?
Well, first I wanted to expel upon our, my upbringing.
Yeah.
So, that's very common with a lot of people in here these times. They're raised by women. So, similar to your story, I didn't have a lot of women in my family, but I had an immigrant mother who came to the United States. My parents were married for about 10 years, and then they divorced. And I was with my mother. My mother raised me, and then, just growing up with a woman's influence, seeing just trying to see that dynamic. I remember for my, younger life, having a father, I remember all of that. And as far as like trying to build yourself into a man, and then as far as us, carrying what I know into our relationship, it is a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
That is what all we can draw from is our knowledge or either wisdom from someone else.
Yeah.
So I had my grandparents who were married, but that was the silent generation who really didn't talk much about the relationships or didn't, think of it that way. So a lot of my upbringing and also the way that me and my wife communicated in the beginning, one thing we knew that we weren't going to break up. We weren't getting a divorce.
Yeah.
That was the bottom line. We was going to make everything work in this household. We're going to make it work. And so that's what we did. We were committed to the thought of marriage. We were committed all the way through with the intention on being married to each other while we were dating. So that's how we made it work, was just that covenant, that promise that we've made to each other, and that we're going to figure this thing out. We've learned along the way, like I said, through trial and error. I mean, it's just...
Because that's really all you have, like, especially I'm a single parent too, in particular. So when I look, this part of the reason why we do what we do now is to give people a little leg up where you're able to draw from the experience of other people, so you don't have to do so much trial and error.
Yeah.
Because that's was really missing, I feel like, and is missing in a lot of households, is not having those two parents that show you, what you do, how to go along, and give you advice even as you're going along. Because that really just helps you not make, such bad decisions. We both didn't make the best decisions growing up, and we had to learn, like, okay, like you, like, that's not the way to go.
Yeah.
But it is an easier way, like you said, and that way is for, if those who have made it, who are in successful relationships, to give advice, to help the single people and to help those who are just new in relationships to be able to maneuver through. Because like my husband says, you're new when you're in a relationship, and it's going to be that time of, all right, let's talk about how we were raised. That's super imperative. We always mention that for people out there first getting married, please, or first getting in a relationship, please talk about how you were raised. Talk about what you saw. Talk about how people communicated within your relationship, because then what that does is help set the stage for you to understand what is a person's default, which isn't where you have to stay, but it's where a person's often going to revert to, especially if they're angry or something's going on, So that's just important to know, so you can say, oh, wait, that's not, you per se, but it's your trauma, or, how you grew up, or, and then, all right, let's learn a healthier way of doing this, being patient. We were really patient with each other. My mom wasn't married at all either, so I didn't learn at all how to be away from her. But one thing I can say is that she put me in etiquette classes really young. So I was in etiquette classes young. I witnessed other married women and how they acted. I used to watch stuff with other married women all the time, just because I wanted to learn from them, because I knew I didn't have that firsthand experience.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if people could really do that and reach out and try to learn, okay, if I'm not having this within my life now, let me reach out to sources that can provide me with that information. So then that way I'm actually giving myself the knowledge that I need to make better decisions.
For sure.
Yeah, most definitely. That's really what it comes down to is we don't have that knowledge, so you find that mentor. You find somebody. Because if your intention... Everyone's who are dating, your intention is to be married. Yeah. That is the right thing to do. Yeah. So if we don't have that knowledge, and that's something that we don't even consider or even think about, because we weren't raised or taught that as children, to think about ways and figuring out how married couples work, and that dynamic, especially for those people who grew up without a two-parent household. Yeah. Which is pretty much half of society today. And then it's becoming even fewer because of divorce rates. I
heard a quote one time. I forgot what video I was watching, but it was honestly, it was something along the lines of that a lot of like men, when they're boys and growing up and stuff like that, they always say how I want to be a great dad, but never a great husband. Yeah. And when I heard that, I really had to do some reflection on myself and be like, I have said that time and time again. Like I always said I was going to be a better dad, just off the standpoint that I understand the experience of what it was to not have one in my life. But at some point in time, I do hope to be a husband, but I've never said I hope to be a great husband. I mean, now I am, but like prior to hearing that, and that was probably, I heard that probably like 2 months ago. Wow. And I never thought about that. I was like, I always said I'm gonna be a great dad, but I've never said I was gonna be a great partner or relationship or a husband and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
No, that's real. That's real though, because I can relate to that. Yeah. I've said that, I'm gonna be a great dad, what I'm saying? I'm gonna be a great dad. And then the husband part comes up, I'm in it. What I'm saying? Like, so that's why, the dedication to that, has to become with the relationship, and also prior to that, building yourself up to be a husband. Yeah. No, that's deep. I appreciate that. So next question, how do you approach emotional vulnerability in dating, and how important is it to you in finding a fulfilling relationship?
Well, I think the important thing is that we understand that there's steps to even vulnerability, right? Before we even get to that point, I think we have to be very transparent. And I think a lot of people feel as though transparency and vulnerability are the same thing, but it's a stepping process, right? So for me, or for anybody that I may talk to, I said, just be transparent about how you feel. It's not leaving all your cards on the table. You're still playing it kind of close to the chest, but be able to be transparent about where you're at, right? Because again, if you're meeting that person or you're coming across that person and they are telling you, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and X, Y, Z, they are literally doing the very thing that you should meet them with. Now, because they are more, let's say, secure in that, you may feel as though like, I really want this person. So I need to start changing and maneuvering some things. You may want this person, but you don't know that person.
Right.
Right. So before we even get to the vulnerability piece, I have to be at least transparent. And if my transparency and yours are like kind of meshing, and I can see like as much as I'm taking in what this person is saying and they're taking what I'm saying, let's start putting some of the cards on the table then, because now we've established that secure spot or that safe place where it's like my natural transparency can now fall into vulnerability. So that way it's like, now nothing that I say is going to be, let's say, like out of the norm. I'm not coming to you one random day and saying, well, yeah, I'm really feeling this, and this is completely different than than what we initially said when we first met. So I think to understand or to get to the point of vulnerability, we just have to be transparent and honest about where we are, what we're wanting, what we're desiring, and stuff like that. Because now if I'm in a place of vulnerability, now I'm wide open.
Right.
And if I wasn't, and some people could be saying something very different now that they got you in comparison to when they first met you, you know?
Right.
So I think before we get to vulnerability, it just has to be that transparency and knowing that you're not any less or weaker because you're stating where you are and talking about those feelings and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say transparency first before the vulnerability.
Yep.
No, I just wanted to add too, like what you're saying is the intention. So you got to be very intentional. I think, of course, first before you get into any relationship about how far you really trying to take this.
Right.
That's what I'm getting from you. And just to paraphrase.
Yeah.
Like if you're just a one night stand situation, or I'm just trying to hit it or quit it or whatever the case may be intentional and be honest about it.
Yeah.
Because what you were saying is giving those mixed signals with the other person. They want to, I like this person. I really want to make this thing work with them, but it's not going to work because their intentions are not aligned with you.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of the problems with, with especially younger relationships, or maybe even older people, when somebody gets played, and then that turns somebody to be cold and hard when that person was intentional about marriage. So you got to lay that all out there and be clear and honest, like Calvin's saying, and be intentional about what you're trying to do. And I always bring this up. I was intentional about marriage before I met my wife, because I put a solicitation for a wife on Facebook, and I tried to go back and find it, but.
And I didn't see it. No,
she didn't see it, but it was divine how we got back together, because a friend of mine, he saw it and he was like, "Hey man, why don't you talk to D? Talk to her, because we had broken up, but this was years later." And I was like,
it was like a year later.
A year later, it was like a year later, and I was like, "All right, okay," because my intentions changed. And so I wanted to lay it all out on the line for her and be like, look, I know things were wrong in the past, but I'm really intentional about you. And some things happened, she had to move in with me so she could finish college and stuff like that. So I had to prove it to her. So with that intention came proof. So you got to really prove it and show it to somebody. So bottom line, you really got to be 100% yourself. You got to be true to yourself first before you go out and try to find somebody in what you really actually trying to spend the rest of your life with.
Yeah.
Because that intention and that alignment has to line up together in order to make things work. You got to have that covenant between that person, yourself, and that other person as well, so that you can make things work,
Yeah. D, so I have a question for you then. What was it for you, or what was your gauge on when he actually finally proved it to you?
Oh, because I asked him. We were very open with communication.
Yeah.
And I was like, so what are we doing? Are you serious? Because it was our breakup. I took that hard at the first time. So that was me. I loved him still, and I wanted to be with him. So it was just like, his word. He gave me his word, and I'm a very forgiving person. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't believe in second chances, but you want God to forgive you. So you need to be forgiving towards others. Of course, you don't be stupid.
Yeah.
But with that, I was very forgiving, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, I believe your word. Now with him, he showed up in times where I needed him. He was always there. I paid a little attention to, like, are you always in your phone? What are you doing? Are you showing me that attention? And he was. So paying attention to those little cues that, hey, he looks like he is really committed. And then that turned into, I think it was like 9 months later, he proposed. So it was very, from there, it moved pretty fast. And that's where I knew, okay, he really is serious.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but the intention has to come proof. You know, I'm not the one for someone to just sit around and wait years and years and wait for a marriage with that
Yeah.
same person, and they're not showing you any proof.
Yeah.
You know, you're just holding on to the thought of love and thought of marriage, which isn't getting you anywhere. So I'm not, you know, I always say don't make yourself a fool from anyone.
Right, right.
But with that intention has to come proof.
Yeah.
So, so number 4.
Oh, can we do the non-negotiables?
Yeah.
I'm curious about
Number 5. So, what are some of your non-negotiables or deal breakers when considering a potential spouse?
that. That's a good one.
So for me, non-negotiables really play back into like how I grew up, you know. So I grew up in the church. I'm not saying I do everything right, you know. I'm figuring it out every day like everybody else. But I never put the expectation on somebody to be perfect, you know. So a simple non-negotiable is like we have to believe in the same thing. You know, that is just out the gate. If you're saying like, I don't know, whatever, then I'm already like, yeah, nah, you know, because again, that goes back to the whole intentional thing. I know where I'm at and I know where I'm in my journey, not just like in the spiritual, but physically, mentally, emotionally. Like there's certain things that we have to be able to just naturally agree on. Now, how we get to that part, that's not that big of a concern for me off the get-go. But if we can at least get to that point where it's like, I agree with that, you agree with that, cool. Now, how we may get there is what the dating part comes in. You know what I'm saying? So as far as non-negotiables, it's like we have to believe in the same thing. We have to understand that, you know, I'm 25, so I'm still trying to build myself up, build my career. I hope you're trying to do the same thing, whether that's you're in school, whether that's in your professional career, or maybe you're very intentional about what your purpose or what you're trying to find to do. I can work with that, you know. And same way with me, I have a whole bunch of ideas, right? But it's like, can you write it out with me? You know. Now I'm not saying I'm just quitting no jobs, right? I still got to make my money and stuff like that. But if there's something that I'm curious about or wanting to venture or something like that, can you take that ride with me? And in the same respect, can I take that ride with you, right? So just understanding that, one, for like my non-negotiable is like, do you know what is meant for you just for you? And if that aligns with where I'm at, cool. So
Can I ask this question?
Yeah, for sure.
To add on, what qualities are you looking for in a wife?
Qualities in a wife, somebody who's patient. Patience is very big for me. Somebody who is willing to adjust at a given time. I'm a social worker, therapist, and stuff like that. So I talk to a lot of people, and it's somebody who can be patient when I'm having to do a session at 7 p.m. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who, like I said, we believe in the same thing. We understand that it's work. We understand that it's going to come with a lot of challenges and stuff like that. And that's really it. Like, I don't really have that long or exhaustive of a list. I think it's really, for me, it's like, how do you carry yourself, right? What do you do when, not necessarily like when I'm not around, but just who are you and what is your genuine nature? Are you, I like somebody who is soft, right? But still
Feminine.
firm, feminine, but still is firm and secure in who they are.
Gotcha.
But in same way, you still put that same challenge on me, right? And yeah, somebody who's not afraid to challenge me, to be honest with you. As long as it's the challenges from the space of
Support.
Right.
and knowing what my real potential is, and not just saying like, why you not doing this? Why you not doing this? Like,
Right.
maybe I didn't think about it.
Right, you don't want nobody to nag you.
Yeah, maybe I just didn't think about that. So somebody who's just patient, somebody who's not afraid to challenge me, and somebody who's honestly just on the path of making sure that they are in the best possible place that they can be. That's because that's who they are, and I don't have to convince somebody to do that for themselves. Yeah.
Got you.
I would say also make sure that the woman is willing to get onto your program to allow you to lead, because I know you mentioned the woman leading also, but it's very important that you have set that standard of you being the leader within your relationship. So you want the woman to be open to taking that leadership.
Yeah.
And that also means that maybe she might have to adjust where she's working or adjust, school. And a woman, I really do encourage women to be more malleable in that stance, especially if you want the man to be the provider, the man to be the protector, for the man to actually take that lead role. You both can't be out here, going your own ways, doing your own thing. You really have to figure out a way to make that come together. And it's a lot easier. That's honestly why I encourage women to get into relationships earlier, because once you're older, you have your schedule, you have your ways. Exactly. You have all that already, things that you've been habits built up that you've been doing all this time. So it's a lot harder for you to be malleable and allow the man to take that lead role. You'll be more likely, like, I've been doing this all my time, hyper independent. I think we before the show talked about that, because you're so used to doing that. And that's okay, but it's a level of, let me step back and let me see how I can fit in, and we can fit each other into what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Right. Because to expand on what my wife said, to add about that, the set in the ways thing, I recently saw a statistic about divorce. And I knew that 80% of divorce were initiated by women in the relationships. 56% of all marriage relationships end in divorce currently right now. But I think 70 to 80% of those relationships are women over the age of 40 who are divorcing their husbands. So talking about this set in the ways thing, and then now people are marrying later in life. And we're both marrying at the age of 30, men and women. After COVID now is 30, men and women on average. In the 90s or 2000s, it was anywhere between 25 and 23. Women marrying younger at the age of 23, men at 25. So it's getting up and up and up, but it's getting to that danger zone of, 30, 35, 40, when everybody just not even marrying or, divorcing. So that set in the ways things that my wife is saying is true. Women need to be in the younger ages more mindful of marriage and trying to find someone who can be their provider protector, because it's easier that way in that relationship for relationships to work in those roles, as opposed to someone who's already set in their ways and not malleable and not flexible at all, and trying to get you to do everything that they want you to do all the time. So, and then vice versa too. Men need to be able to be the provider protector, but also to being able to be, emotionally understanding and also flexible, and also as well for their wives when they need them too. So it's a balance in the support system. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And it's growth that has to come with it too, because being that he was, younger, he certainly wasn't old, but I was young and I had just graduated from college and stuff. So I still knew we have work to do. So it's still the object of, hey, we're going to build this life together. And that's easier to do when you're younger and you're trying to actually build that life. And then the woman being understanding that the man has to have that time to build himself up, be supportive to that, figure out ways that you can, fit into that and be supportive of that and set him up. So then you get all the opportunity to do whatever you want to do. Because I think women miss that the freedom comes from once the man is fully set up by you giving him that support. So it's definitely a balance that has to be there. And unfortunately, I think a lot of women are missing that mark, because they think, the man has to be at the finish line and ready to go. And then he'll choose me amongst thousands of other women that are also going to be at this finish line waiting for this well put together man.
So I guess my question for you guys then, especially as a married couple, what was the thing where it's like, I know I have to adjust? What is the motivating factor behind knowing adjusting is necessary in this relationship?
I can talk about that, but first, what do you mean by whatever, whenever?
I know, yes.
We're going to get a whole lot of comments.
Oh, okay, right. No, what I mean is I'm on my own time. I don't have a 9 to 5. I don't clock in. I wake up with my kids and we do whatever we want to do for that day, because I homeschool and stuff like that. And I cook, certain times of the day. In fact, I'm up. My day starts 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and it's consistent every single day. So I have a lot of time on my hands to where I'm able to utilize my schedule schedule in a certain way. But to be honest, kind of to piggyback on that, because that leads right into it, we talked about what we wanted our lives to look like when we were together. Like that was something that we talked about very early. Yeah. And it was an agreement that we came on. So we had already set the roles in a way, I guess, not so much the standards, but just for us, how we were going to conduct ourselves in the relationship. And that allowed us to then say, okay, I know what I need to work towards to get to be who I need to be for you. And then same that way. So it's very important to have that conversation ahead of time. Like, what do you want your wife to be doing? It's okay to have some opinion. You don't want your wife out here on OnlyFans. So it's okay to have some opinion on what she's doing. It's certainly okay with that.
Those boundaries got to be set early.
Yeah.
But yeah, you said, what is that? When was that point where we knew that, I guess when we had to make changes or make growth?
Yeah, like when do you, like, how did you know in order for this relationship to actually grow, what was like, I guess, what is the motivating factor for you to know like adjusting is necessary for this relationship?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Usually you come into a situation to where you all both are butting heads about something. And your wife is trying to verbally express herself that refinement is needed and for you to do something better. So for a single young man who has his own hobbies, playing video games, going to the gym and doing things when I want to do it, all of that has to change. And if it's become a hindrance to your wife, then she's going to let you know. Yeah. Like, hey, I need you to help me do some chores, take out dishes, help with if you have children, help with the child, change some diapers. I'm tired. Yeah. I need you to stop playing video games and stop going to the gym. I need your help. Yeah. So refinement, you will see warning signs in your relationship that let you know that, hey, I'm not trying to hurt you or harm you, even though it sounds that way. Yeah. I'm not trying to, basically tell you what to do, but that call on needing help in the relationship is an opportunity for refinement. So that's my advice. And my inspiration is, of course, I'm all in on this marriage. Let me be of service to you. Because when marriage is being of service to your spouse, and that's one of the things that you have to agree and sign up for. And since I'm hearing her cries for help, help me, then I'm here to make and willing to make those adjustments and sacrifices. Because with those sacrifices come refinement. It makes you a better husband. It makes you a better man. It makes you a better father. Those are the type of signs and things that I've seen. And those are the pivots and she inspires me with her wifely duties and being a wife to me. So I'm not going to, tell her like, whatever. I'm not going to make these changes. You go handle it on your own. I'm understanding of her emotional situation. I'm like, okay, how can I best serve you? So that's really what that looks like as far as you knowing when I need to make some changes. You don't just, I'm tired of this. I quit on this relationship. You have to be a willing participant in the relationship and try to make things work and make things better. Yeah. And a lot of times it's really you that need to make that change in that relationship. Okay. Yeah. So that's the warning sign of refinement or making that pivot in the relationship. And often at times it feels like you got to walk on coals. It's going to be uncomfortable because it's going to make you do things that you've never done before. But ultimately, you know that it's the better decision and the right thing to do and the unselfish thing to do for the betterment of the relationship.
It sounds like it's really just getting out of your own way for the betterment of my partner, understanding they have needs too.
Right, exactly.
And women too. Women have to be mindful of how you approach when you need things done. Like you really just can't go nagging and being mean because it's not, it's not very receiving. You're not going to the man's not going to take it on that way. So just being kind about things. And I know it can be difficult, especially during that time of the month. I always mention for like women being mindful, of those hormones and how it can impact the way you communicate with each other. If you know that, hey, I'm feeling a little hormonal, speak up and let your husband know. So then that way he can adjust then and be like, okay, let me help out a little bit more, or let me give you some space, whatever it is that needs to be done. But communication is really, really big, and honestly, gentle communication, because you don't want to be so forceful and demanding, and because that just seems quite ungrateful. And then really being appreciative when you noticing that your spouse is doing these things for you, they're making the adjustments. Take the time to appreciate them, do little things for them, go out of your way for them as well. So so that it's both reciprocated, because you don't want that spouse to feel like, wow, I'm just doing all of this and you're not, doing what you need to be done.
Right.
But definitely stay up on your own roles as well. As a woman, I recommend that women cook and you clean too, and you do these things, you take care of the children and stuff like that. I know we're in new dynamics where not all women are stay-at-home wives, which is okay, but you still have the duty of cooking for your household. You cook for yourself, you should want to be able to cook for your man in your household. I don't think that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And honestly, if a woman is too off-putting from that, it's a little selfish.
Yeah.
So, just being mindful of all of that is important.
No, but yeah, great question. I appreciate that. So what are some of the biggest challenges you face or faced in finding meaningful connections in today's modern world?
So I would say for me, right, just me as an individual, there's not many challenges that I feel like I really face because I'm fully confident in where I'm at in life and what I'm looking and what I'm desiring, So I don't put myself in situations that I don't see no way out of, I don't put myself in situations where I am trying to figure out how am I going to get this person to see where I'm coming from, That was one of those big trial and error things that I've had to just learn time and time again. This is what happens when I do this. Or if this person displays this, then I know I need to back out, right? And not backing out where it's like I'm not giving the person the chance. But if you're saying the same thing consistently and there's no budging and you're not reading where I'm at, even like my nonverbal, I need to go ahead and bow out gracefully. But I would say just in general, I would be one of the biggest challenges that I think people face, and even myself, to be honest with you, is just it's like unrealistic expectations depending on the status of the relationship, right? So if we've been dating for like 2 months, it wouldn't make sense for me to be like, you need to start acting like a wife. We're just dating, right? Or if we're just in the talking phase, maybe you don't need to be looking at me where it's like, I'm paying for everything, like just little things like that, and understanding that as the relationship grows, the roles deepen and they change. But I think a lot of people, and again, even myself, really try to fall in a certain rhythm before it's time. And because the relationship isn't set around the status of the relationship does not meet the roles that we're trying to implement, we need to like readjust. But by that time, when it's time to readjust, it's like we already burnt everything out before the time came, So that's where I'm at with that.
Okay. So I do want to ask, how do you handle navigating finances on dates and early relationships, especially with the increasing narratives about how much money a man should make or provide when dating and in a relationship? Because a lot of, you see it on their social media and all this stuff that women, they want their rent paid and stuff, all that before we go on a date or during the date or whatever the case may be. And that is something that, you see trending, that's supposed to be a norm.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as a norm at all.
Yeah.
But what is your opinion about that as far as navigating finances on dates and early in relationships, if you spoke on that?
So in my head, I'd be saying like funny stuff just to keep things light, because I understand finances is always going to come up. So one thing I always tell men is like, if you're ever planning a first date, never allow the first date to be more than what you're wearing. So it's like, if you have on, let's say, $200 worth of things, the date should not be more than $200.
Is that for both of you or just for her?
No, that's just for me, because honestly, I'm paying, right? So if I have on $250 worth of stuff, I don't need to be doing $250 worth of things, because now I'm out $250 that I could spend, let's say, on another outfit or whatever it is that I want to do. So I would say like finances is just one of those things where it's only a big deal in the relationship if you make it. If you know you're not willing to do XYZ, again, be transparent about that. Be like, you want boom, 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 boom. If the best first date I have to offer is a coffee date and that's not something you're willing to do, that's okay. But if I want to take you out on, I honestly think it's just setting the expectation early. So it's like if you're taking a person to Ruth's Chris on the very first date and they expect Ruth's Chris you set the standard.
Right.
You know? But if it's like, hey, I just want to take you on a first date to meet you and can we like go grab coffee and then, but as a man, I would say plan for other stuff along the way. So it's like, yes, we're just going to do coffee. We're going to talk or whatever. But in the back of my mind, I have XYZ planned as well. Because if the coffee date goes well and I'm really enjoying it, maybe we can go to the museum. Maybe we can go karting or something like that.
Right.
So
Cool.
I really think it's like, as far as dating and finances go, if you're with the person who is setting that standard for you or that expectation and you know you're not there, fine. But if we're both of the understanding, like, hey, we're young, we're getting fresh in our careers, and I'm still moving and doing some stuff, and then you're also still moving and doing some stuff, it's not outside of the realm of possibility for that other person to pay for the date if we both sharing that interest. So I would say for a lot of men, like, know where your financial situation is, and if the person or the partner that you're trying to court and so on, they're meeting you with like, this is my standard and stuff like that, and you're not ready for that, bow gracefully and know like, hey, it was nice knowing you, whatever, but that's just not where I'm at. So I don't think it has to be hard. I think we make it hard.
Yes.
And just knowing like, if I can't afford that, I just can't afford that. But to say like, for people to say like, I'm not in the financial spot to start dating, I just think we're making it harder than what it has to be.
Yeah. I agree, especially when I see these lists of places not to take a woman and lists of things that I'm just like, what are you, like, really? Because to be honest, there is nothing I wouldn't do with my husband. I want to go anywhere and everywhere, and I don't even care if it doesn't cost us anything. That's just the experience I'm wanting to have with him. So it's sad, in my opinion, because women are putting themselves away from actually being open to many opportunities and many
disqualifying themselves.
Yeah, because you're just so rigid in what you want this man to do for you. And quite frankly, it's coming off kind of prostitution. Because it's like, why this man has to pay so much just to spend time with you?
Because it's like, I always say, like, I don't want to have to find out 4 or 5 months into a relationship that you like Waffle House. I could have been taking you to
right, exactly.
Been taking you to Waffle House. Not saying that's the limit, but if I just want to spend some time with you or whatever, and we just go down to the Waffle House, let's just go to Waffle House or something like that, or let's just grab a quick burger or whatever. Like, I never want to have to put my mindset where it's like, 7 o'clock, let me get an additional $400 in my account, so that way I can just enjoy this time, you know? So I really do think we make it harder than what it has to be. But if a person is saying the same thing consistently about what their expectation is, and take them for the word.
Just let them be.
Just take them for their word.
Right. In other words, ladies, stop putting a price tag on dates. So you will fare off better and find somebody who you're actually trying to build a relationship with. So the intention, I think a lot of those women, they're not intentionally trying to date or find a husband at all.
Maybe they just want a meal or something. Go to that nice place to Instagram it or something.
I'm not trying to discount the fact that, people's traumas and things put up barriers and guards either. So that's where a lot of that is coming from.
And I think where a lot of men do is we try to show, like I said earlier, I think we really try to show everything off the rip, right? And a lot of times, not every woman's gonna ask you for that. Right? I think, and this is just a blanket statement, I think a lot of times men, we really put the standard on ourselves to show up here, right? Whereas like if you go on a date, you may not be at a 8 or a 9 that day. You really may be at that 5 or 6, So I think it's like, listen to what she's saying or listen to what this person is expressing to you. If they're not saying you got to take me out here, or just ask, like, what do you like to do?
Right.
Where do you like to eat? If they're saying, I want a tomahawk steak, you maybe not need to do that.
Right.
Maybe you just got money for a burger, right? So it's like, don't put yourself in a situation where you can't consistently maintain. Because now if you're showing her you got this money, you do all these things, she's gonna want to see that.
Right.
But if you know that is something that's personal to you, even going back to the whole finances thing, if you know your money is personal to you, you have to allow this person you have to build the trust in the person to show that, and them not have the expectation that I'm just going to be shelling out
ATM.
money. I'm just the ATM. Like set the standard for whatever the expectation is going to be. You know?
Yeah.
There you go. Yep, exactly.
I think you're right. Like sometimes with women, we'll fantasize how we want these dates to go.
Yeah.
Especially if maybe you grew up impoverished and you didn't have those luxury experiences, and you see it all on TV or Instagram or whatever. And then you come to say, oh, a man that loves me has to do this. When in reality, it isn't. One of my favorite dates that we did, I don't know if you even remember, it was my birthday, and we just got Chick-fil-A to go and went outside the lake in Richmond, or the river outside of Richmond, and sat there and ate Chick-fil-A next to them. And it was so nice. And that was one of my favorite times. It was a picnic by the water, and it was so cheap. I think at that time Chick-fil-A didn't cost that much. It was like maybe $20 for that whole meal, and it was nice. And that's something years later, a decade later, I remember that, and I love and cherish that moment. And it wasn't no expensive time that we did, but it was just the time and the quality.
Yeah, I think we just always forget to appreciate the simplicity in dates, but understanding like where the intention really lied, right? Because if you like the water and he gets Chick-fil-A and you're eating it by the water, it's like, wow, he actually listened, right? And it's not, like you said, it's not the price tag of it. It's just the intentional simplicity of how the date and stuff like that happens. So
and that's what I mean by quality. That is exactly it.
Yes,
it's all about intention. So this is the last question. What advice would you give a man about coping with rejection in the dating world, and how do you bounce back and stay positive?
Well, I will say that for any man who goes through that rejection or goes through that period of time where you are trying to bounce back and stuff like that, is understanding and honestly just taking accountability for maybe what you did, right? It's hard to try to focus on the mindset or the thoughts of the person who did it to you, because now they're gone, right? Maybe the question that you had, you can't ask no more because we didn't know how to communicate it properly, right? But maybe when you're in that space, you're really thinking about like, maybe I yelled when I shouldn't have. Maybe my tone was higher, and this is something she kept on telling me. So like in this space and time, while I'm understanding that, yes, I'm feeling a level of rejection, how do I take the accountability for the things that I know I've done? Because once that person is gone, they're gone, right? So if you're in that space and you're really going through a period of rejection, understand that the rejection is just for who you are in that current space, but not who you have the potential to be. And that the rejection, like you said earlier, is just really the refinement process for you to be prepared for who that next person or with this or the next opportunities in your life.
Now, I do want to ask this question. What would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now, about anything? And also to relationship, though. What would you tell your younger self?
If I could tell myself anything, is put your pride to the side. Put your pride to the side. And even as it pertains to relationships, there's never a level of don't put yourself in situations where I have to feel like I have to be 100%. You know, that's something I hear a lot, where it's like people say you're never going to be 100%, but understanding that there's a level of security that I need, and to not budge on my non-negotiables, not to settle, you know. But at the same time, when it comes to the space of being in a relationship with somebody, I can't focus on everything that I can provide. I also have to be attentive to what this person can provide to me as well. So just understanding that balance and understand the importance of compromise and stuff like that. But to sum that all up, get out of my own way. Get out of my own way and be open to the idea that somebody may know how to care for me and love me in a way that I never knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good advice. I think for all people in particular, because sometimes we put such hard standards on yourself and then on your spouse or your potential spouse
Yeah.
that you kind of put things in your way, barriers in your way that doesn't allow you to see the potential of the next person
Yeah.
or see the potential in yourself.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because I really believe relationships is all about coming together and having two people hold up a mirror so that you're able to see how you can better each other, how that person can get better, how you all can grow together, because you're never going to be the same way at any point in your relationship. You're always going to change. Things are always going to happen. And you got to be open to that and willing to, get out of your own way and allow yourself to go through that because it's needed.
For sure.
Yep. I just wanted to say, set clear expectations and healthy standards.
Yes.
Healthy standards, clear expectations. Calvin, did you have anything else you want to say, like any handles people can join you or anything you want to do?
You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, calvinmac._. I got some content I'm creating, open for anybody. It's men and women, but it's really just for men to actually understand that you have a place in the world, and two, we need to stop being so hard on ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, Instagram, TikTok, calvinmac._. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I got some things on the way. I appreciate you guys having me.
No, I appreciate
this was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the things that you guys do as well.
Thank you, brother.
Same
Appreciate
here.
you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So with that being said, Blueprint family, thank you all for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you. Peace. Hit that like and subscribe.